If meditation has ever felt intimidating, too slow, or something like you should do but never stick with, you are not alone. What if it wasn't about being perfectly calm, but about training your focus like a fighter? Today's guest, Jeff Patterson, is both a master martial arts artist and a meditation teacher who's helped thousands learn to yield without giving up their edge. But before we dive into this episode, you know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your anti-inflammatory lifestyle coach, Jovonnie, and I am joined in the Good Vibe studio by Jeff. Jeff, welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem at all. So, Jeff, I love that your meditation journey started through boxing. Can you take us back to the moment and how something so still helped you become a better fighter?
Yeah, so I was boxing at a fairly young age. I used to go to a boxing gym that was just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, for those of you that aren't familiar with them, they're run a lot different than your traditional style fitness classes where you'll have a teacher up in front of a group of students. Usually at a boxing gym, there might be 3 to 5 coaches rolling around. And each one of those coaches might have a handful of fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of these coaches was a very well-known coach. He had created champions in both the amateur and the professional arena. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him, but he wasn't looking to take on any new fighters, and he had a pretty full card. And so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work hard and try to get him to notice me. And basically, after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started giving me some tips and helping me out a little bit. And it was only maybe a couple weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, you know, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, you know, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And, you know, I had no idea where I was going with this, but not only has it changed my life in many ways through the years, I've had thousands of students come through my academy and through my online programs, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about writing my last few books and just trying to get this message out there.
Thank you for like really walking us down that journey, especially with like your preconceived notion of what meditation even was supposed to look like after being introduced to it, or it being a suggestion in regards to something that you can really get into it. Was there a specific moment that changed everything for you and opened you up to the deeper layers of meditative practice?
Yeah, there was. I was in the beginning doing the practice for ulterior motives, trying to be a better fighter. And so sometimes it was almost, there was a little bit of reluctancy of even wanting to go down and practice. But because I had so much respect for this coach, and I never wanted to have to go to the gym and tell him I didn't do my training for the day. And so I did it religiously, you know, whether I wanted to or not. And it was about maybe 6 or 7 months into my meditation journey when I went down into my basement in the morning to do my ritual practice, which is what I always did. I looked up at the clock and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 10 or 15 minutes. And I had this euphoric sensation. I was very much in the moment. And from that point on, I was hooked. I was like, I've got to see more of this. There's so much here that I don't understand. I'm not really sure at the time, you know, what's going on. And from then on, I started seeking out other meditation teachers. I started traveling around the world and training with different people. And it really started moving into one of my main focuses.
I love it. Thank you for that. Why do you believe that meditation is actually a warrior type of practice and not just a peaceful one?
Well, there's many different directions you can take a meditation practice. So I break down the meditative arts into 5 main paths. There is the athletic or the performance path that helps us be more responsive, more in tune with the mind body connection. It helps us perform at those higher levels while staying centered and rooted. There's the therapeutic path, which is good for our longevity and our overall mobility and health. There's the medical side of the practice, which all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, which is a very deep path to follow. Then there's the philosophical side of the practice, which has always been one of my big interests and something that I've been drawn to, because studying the philosophical side of the practice helps open up your peripheral vision so you see things from multiple angles, and it also helps you be more strategic. And then lastly, there is more of the spiritual side of the practice. And while all of them value, a lot of times when somebody new is coming to the practice, they might just follow one of those paths or maybe a combination of a couple of them. And so there's many different directions you can take the practice.
I appreciate you breaking down those 5 paths and why they're so different when it comes into the meditative arts. So that was athletic, therapeutic, medical, philosophical, and spiritual. And I love that you talked about, even with the philosophical part, where you're adding strategy and thinking creativity, and it's a thought process that starts to change because now you've gotten to a place where you know yourself a little bit better. You've been still, you've been able to observe yourself from a different lens. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody articulate those different paths to meditation and why they're so different and how they serve the body and serve the person as a whole being. And so I really appreciate and thank you for allowing us to take a deeper dive into those 5 pathways. And I also love that you talked about the last 36 years traveling and studying with different meditation masters. What would be that one word to describe what it feels like to learn from other people and explore these different teachers when it comes to meditation?
If I had to pick one word, I would say grateful.
Mm.
However, there's so much more than just that. I always remember an old meditation teacher of mine tell me that you want to create a life and not make a living. And following the meditation path has helped me create the life that I want. And I find that with so many of my students that a lot of times, there's so many things going on and distractions that we live through every day. A lot of times we get kind of lost and we lose track of who we are and our basic connection. One of my old meditation teachers, he'd always talk about how a lot of times we're walking around with masks on. We're trying not to let people know how we really feel, or maybe we don't want to say something to unsettle somebody or whatever the reason. And we get so used to wearing these masks all the time that eventually we start looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing these masks. And meditation is one of those things that helps us let those masks and those walls and those barriers down so we can truly stay connected to what's important to us.
I love that. Create a life, not make a living. That's powerful, because so many times people are like, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? What would you like to do for a living? And so I love the create a life, not make a living approach. But then I also appreciate the nugget or the gem, so to speak, of about distractions causing us to get lost. And I feel like I've been there before. Just being distracted by so many other things happening, and running a business, trying to figure out the best pathway to go and create and carve, and what's the strategy, what strategy would be aligned. And I feel like distraction definitely does allow you to feel more lost, a little bit more confused. And then there's this I'm striving for clarity, when it's really, what's your vision? How do you get back to your vision? And what would you say to someone right now that's listening, that is very highly distracted in this thing called life, feels a little lost right now? What would you kind of tell them? Walk them through like maybe 3 steps, Jeff, of what they could be doing right now to better get in alignment with themselves.
Anytime somebody new comes to the meditation practice, I have 3 considerations that I like them to spend a little bit of time with. And it's important because, through the years, I've been teaching for over 30 years. One of the hardest things that I've come up with as a teacher is, how do I get people to see the value of this practice and really want to experience it and get the most out of it? And so with these 3 considerations, the first one is thinking about, what is it that's drawing them to the practice? Why do they want to get into meditation? Do they want to improve their health so they can watch their grandkids grow up? Or maybe they're dealing with a stress disorder, or maybe they're an athlete and they want to improve their performance. Whatever that why is, put some heartfelt thought into that. And then once you have that, think about maybe 10 or 20 things that will positively change in your life by accomplishing that goal. How will your relationships change? How will your work change? How will your interpersonal communications change? All of these different things that will add value to your life by accomplishing that goal. And then I like them to flip the coin and think about 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if they don't do this. And what this does is it helps give them that fuel, so they start seeing the value in the practice and really have the desire to want to do it every day. Because if you feel like it's a chore you have to do every day, you're not going to get it. You want to have that feeling to where, I'm lucky I get to do this practice. It's giving me so many benefits. This is something that I look forward to, and I'm excited about getting to do it every day. And when you reach that point, that's very important. The second consideration is the idea of consistency. And this is so important, and there's this Chinese story that I really enjoy that kind of helps illustrate this idea. And it's about this old stonecutter who was very well known all over China. He created these animals and these landscapes, and his work was so unique and so detailed that anytime somebody would see it from anywhere, they just knew it was his. And because of his reputation, he'd have people from all around that would come to stay with him for years at a time and study and learn the trade. Well, every morning, this old stonecutter, he'd begin the day down by the river meditating. And one day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he has this profound vision of this big 6-foot tall, mystical Chinese jade dragon. And he's so taken by this vision that he just knows it has to be his next project. So he spends the next few months traveling all around looking for the perfect piece of stone for his new creation. Finally, when he finds it, he brings it back to his place, and he spends the next period of time, day in and out, just sitting with the stone, trying to feel the energy and envision how this dragon is going to appear. Then one day, when he begins working on the stone, he carefully places his chisel on the backside of the rock and starts tapping away with his hammer, hundreds, if not thousands of times every day to the exact same spot, and there was no change. A few days went by and still nothing. A few more days went by and thousands of taps to the hammer and still nothing. And his apprentices, they kind of started second guessing him and saying, why doesn't he try something else? It doesn't seem to be working. And finally, a few more days went by and thousands of more taps to the chisel. And this big 3-foot section of the stone separated and created this smooth, slightly curved line that was soon to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices who was watching said, how did you know that that strike was going to break the stone? And the stonecutter said, it wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone. And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, but I've been watching you and there was no change, not even a crack. Why keep doing the same thing over and over again? And the stonecutter, he got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And not only was the stone being molded, so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I resonate so well with this story is that this is the meditative journey. You know, you're studying these breathwork strategies, these movement practices, these philosophical concepts, and we don't always see the change happening day to day. But through our consistent effort and that repetition, we're laying the foundation that gives us these fruits that pay out for the rest of our lives. And then the third and final consideration is the idea that we need to find a guide. You know, the meditative arts is extremely deep. There's millions of videos out there on YouTube or whatever source you have that you're looking for information. And if you think that you're going to sift through all of that stuff with a very limited education in this practice, you're going to waste a lot of time. And, you know, I've literally seen people come into the academy who have been self-taught, and some of them have trained 10, even 15 years, and they're never barely past the surface. You know, they don't have much depth in their practice. And so if you can find a guide, figure out what your why is, understand the importance of consistency, these three things will help you be more successful in a practice than pretty much anything else you can do when you're getting started.
Thank you. I really appreciated that deep dive, Jeff. And if you are getting value from this conversation and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment. What resonated most to you out of these three steps? Which step do you think would be the most valuable to you right now? And then if you listen on your favorite podcast distribution platform, make sure you give the show a rating and a review, and not just a good listen to. Those three considerations. That first one, what is drawing you to the meditation practice and why? I really like the deeper dive that you took there, Jeff, to identify the 10 to 20 things that's going to happen to your life. What are those improvements? What are those things that you want to see happening? But then also the 10 to 20 things that if you don't take action, where is your life going to be headed? What does that look like? And I don't think we give enough conversation and context around inaction after you've been told something or educated on something or empowered about something or a concept, knowing what it can do or benefit you in regards to the why. But then number two, the idea of consistency. I love the power in the fact that you're changing beneath the surface. You don't know what that's going to look like and how that's going to translate into your life, your lifestyle, how you're living. And so I really love the idea of consistency. And then number three, needing to find a guide. I don't think that I love that you talked about there are people that have been self-trained, self-taught. But then when you allow yourself to collaborate with others, a guide that has education, that has experience, they can really elevate your skill sets in regards to this wellness tool that you're now adopting to bring into your lifestyle. And so always knowing that it's possible to find the guide, you need to know what resonates in regards to that guide and why you want this guide to lead you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. What would you say to someone who's looking to get into it and they need that guide? How do they identify with the proper guide to help them with the meditative arts process?
Well, you need to probably meet a few. I would say to start with, you know, anybody that you feel connected to, somebody that says something that maybe resonates with what you say, and you know, you could be lucky and find that person that really kind of opens up your eyes and shows you a lot of different things the first time, you know, and you might have to go through, you know, 5 or 6, you know, before you find that person. But just, you know, follow your intuition, feel like what feels like a connection to you. And if you find something that sits well with you, then investigate it further, you know, and kind of see if you still feel that way 6 months down the road. However, try, if you're getting value and you're feeling like you're maybe it's not working for you because of your effort, then it might not be the teacher. It might be your effort and consistencies. I see a lot of times people, they're seeing the grass is always greener, but it's looking greener because they're not mowing their own lawn. And, you put your time in first. And if you're doing that, then you can make educated choices on how to move around.
I like that. And I appreciate you for breaking that down in regards to what that looks like. And then putting it back on them with the ownership in regards to not seeing the results or not really feeling like they're getting that transformation. Are you doing the work? Are you being intentional with following through? It's not always necessarily the actual guide itself. So if you've been pushing through pain, wondering why nothing is working or why your energy is always low, then this message is for you. Inside of my free training, I break down the 4-step lifestyle shift that has helped me go from surviving stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, and some hormonal chaos to reclaiming energy, peace, and alignment naturally. So make sure you check the show notes so you can register for that training. So Jeff, you have created something powerful called the Yielding Warrior. What does yielding actually mean in this context, and why is it such a misunderstood strength?
Yeah, doing martial arts, a lot of times when you bring up the term yielding to somebody who doesn't understand it, they think it's being weak or giving up. And I've heard that many times through the years. In my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I talk about how we break down yielding into 3 different sections. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's a bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now in athletics, it's easy to see how this has value because many times we come up against other athletes who are bigger, stronger, and faster than us. And if we don't know how to yield to that, then we're going to lose those battles. And so yielding helps us be successful in many of those scenarios. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your sensory equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. While it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, from day one of integrating a meditation practice into your life, you start to become more aware of these things inside of yourself. And this awareness feeds over into other people. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. So say, for example, you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. It's very easy at this point to adjust the conversation to keep us on a harmonious path. But if I'm not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head, this is not good. And so learning how to be aware of this, one, we're being more considerate. And 2, it allows us to be strategic so we can guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. This is great in our relationships and business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many ways we can apply this concept. Then lastly, we have what we call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about, oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down the road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have stepped back, examined the scenario, not let our emotions get involved and been more present, oftentimes we can make a more educated choice that will save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And, I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running my academy for 30 years here. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do yielding all the time. Well, I would agree that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, whether they label it that or not. It's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of unless they have a practice like this in their life.
I love it. Thank you for walking us through that concept and those three areas of yielding: physical, mental, and emotional, and really recognizing that we need to step back, examine, and be present. What's one internal shift you've seen in your students when they began applying the yielding mindset in their everyday life?
There's so many. A lot of it is with their overall health, because a lot of times people will push through things mentally and physically that aren't necessarily the best for them. But then they can start improving their sensitivity and their awareness and noticing when these things go out of balance, they can make adjustments so they don't get too far down that path where it does reach a breaking point.
I love that. Overall health. I like that. And I think that's such a huge mindset shift to have in regards to yielding and seeing it in everyday life, because there's so many times that we normalize pain. There's so many times where our body is talking to us, sending us messages, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically, and we're just ignoring them and not really owning them and really realizing what's really happening and doing some investigative work to figure out what's really off. And you only get that one body. So I love that. That's the aspect in regards to that mindset shift that you've seen people when they're utilizing mindset in everyday life. So let's kind of get into the 5 regulations. You teach something called the 5 regulations: body, breath, mind, energy, and spirit. Can you break those down for someone that is just starting?
Yeah, these are underlying principles that are the foundation of any meditation practice, whether you're doing Tai Chi or sitting meditation or yoga or breath work, it doesn't matter. Building these strong foundations will help you on any path you decide to follow. And the first one is regulating the body. And the basic idea of regulating the body, it's being aware of your posture and alignment, your muscular tension in the body, your relaxation. An example would be if you think about a time maybe when you're at your computer for 3 or 4 hours, your shoulders are kind of rounded forward, your neck's feeling stiff, and you're feeling pretty lethargic. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. Now, on a little bit of a deeper level of body regulation, it involves maintaining some kind of muscular structure in the body and flexibility, eating a healthy diet to keep our energy levels up, and getting an appropriate amount of sleep. All of these things are kind of foundational principles in that body regulation. Then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is an extremely deep topic and something that we could easily spend, the next couple hours on. But to give you a basic idea, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's hundreds of different breathing strategies. And within these strategies, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style meditations. An example of a yin breath that we do every day is if you ever listen to somebody sleep, you'll notice that their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if we want to tap into this inward energy within our meditation practice, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, with panic attacks, with boosting our creativity. There's lots of reasons why we would focus on this yin side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath. It's more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever pushed your car or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale, put tension in the breath, make the breath audible. This helps generate that outward expression of energy and gives us power. So when we can learn how to use the breath strategically, we can use it to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional well-being throughout the day. You know, everybody goes through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others maybe a little more balanced. But when you start recognizing these ebbs and flows of being excited and being depleted and having these mental ups and downs, we can use the breath now strategically to not have such big dips and valleys in our emotional roller coaster. And so it's very powerful in that way. And then next we have regulating the mind. And, you know, one of the most common things I'll hear people say with the meditative arts is that I tried meditation, but I just couldn't quiet my mind. It didn't work for me. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. And they couldn't be further from the truth, because every time you sit and meditate, you may get distracted 50 times during a 20-minute session, but every time you get distracted, you recognize the imbalance, you use your posture, your breath, your movement to come back to center and find that focus. Now you just got 50 repetitions on how to be out of balance and find center. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to find that center among any chaos that gets thrown your way. And so it's very powerful in that aspect. There's this story of these two monks that are walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, but she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and walks across the puddle, picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles further down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious. And he says, "You know, we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "I left that girl back at the puddle. Why are you still carrying her around?" And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we need to let that stuff go? And so regulating the mind is a huge part of this development. Then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And again, this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could spend hours on. But the basic idea is once you've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, you now have the tools to regulate, circulate the energy in the body, lead it inward, to extend it outward, to get different expressions to help you control and regulate your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And then lastly, we have spiritual regulation. And this is a very profound, deep idea, concept. A basic example of this would be, if you think about a time when you get excited, your body, your mind, you get this elevated spirit in that excitement. However, oftentimes with that elevation of excitement comes tension in the body, and you're not able to perform always as well as you could if you're relaxed. And so a lot of athletes talk about the flow state. And this flow state, what it is being able to increase that excitement and that heightened focus, but at the same time keep that relaxation and that movement of the body so you could be in time and be perform at a higher level. And so this is kind of one of the many examples of how that spiritual cultivation can come into play. And so with these 5 regulations, you can see how they can pretty much affect anything we do in life. And so that's why they're the foundation of the practice.
I greatly appreciate how you walked us through all 5 of the regulations and resonate with them. And then also the stories. Like, I love the one about the mind. Like, let that stuff go. That was 2 miles ago. That 2 miles could have been 30 minutes ago, how fast they were walking. Who knows? And so if you're holding on to anything right now, and that was of the past, and that could have been maybe 10 minutes ago, let it go. Like, your body deserves to let some stuff just go that doesn't serve you and allow you to do the things that you need to do. And speaking of letting certain things go, y'all, in regards to letting stuff go, I want you to let go of some of those processed foods, some of the foods that do not serve you well. So if you're tired of reading every label in the grocery store just to end up with vegan junk, plant-based junk, or processed foods junk that leaves you bloated, sluggish, or stuck in a cycle of inflammation, I want you to grab my plant-based alternative guide. Inside it, I share go-to swaps that are for clean, everyday food. So if you're having your favorite meal and you want to swap out a grain, a vegetable, a fruit, and you want to know the functional nutritional benefits of it, the why behind why you're choosing it and how it serves your body, grab the plant-based alternative guide. It's going to help support your hormone health, reduce that inflammation, and allow things to still taste so good. So go ahead and grab it. The information and link is in the show notes, or go to 4vibrations.com. So Jeff, can you guide us through a 60-second breath or awareness practice to ground ourselves? So something that we can do anytime?
Yeah, I think something that might be the most beneficial to your audience is maybe to talk about a little strategy that they could do every day rather than take them through a
Let's
breath
do
work
it. I'm down
exercise
for
or
an
something.
everyday strategy.
So one of the most common things that people do, their alarm goes off in the morning, they reach
Mm.
over, they pick up their phone and they start scrolling and looking at their to-dos and looking at their calendar and seeing what they've got going on. We are taking one of the most precious times that we have during the day when we wake up and our mind is at rest and at peace and we're not bombarded with these advertisements and these distractions, and we're feeding our mind distractions by picking up our phone and looking at the phone. If you could just take 10 minutes a day when you first wake up and have a few sayings that you go through that put positive thoughts in your mind. Take 10 relaxed, deep breaths. Maybe go out and do some slow movement exercises or some stretches. Something that help put your body and mind in a positive state of mind. This could be so beneficial to you to program yourself to listen and be aware of this, because we get so numb through the day with all these things that are going on. Even when we try to listen, we can never really get to a very deep place in relaxation. But if we can take advantage of those first few minutes of the day, stay away from our phone and do a few minutes of breathing or go through some sayings that program our mind to think positive thoughts. Every day I choose to be positive. I'm grateful for all that I have. I'm capable of achieving great things. I embrace challenges as opportunities for growth, or I take actions towards my goals every day. Something that gives us some kind of positive feedback and drive. When we do that, it will change your life by doing that. It will feed over into every area of your day and will be something very noticeable that you'll see in a fairly short amount of time.
All right, I love it. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. So, y'all, let us know in the comments which one of those things are you willing to attempt to try when you wake up in the morning? Will it be 10 deep breathing breaths? Will it be some stretching in regards to how you're moving your body? Would it be some affirmations, things that you're affirming about your day, about your life, about how you feel about yourself? Let us know what are some ways. And if you're already doing something that puts you in a positive feedback and gives you drive for life every single day, share that in the comments too, because it might be something someone else might want to take away in order to be empowering for them as well. So, Jeff, I have a question. What does it feel like when someone goes from reactive to regulated through meditation?
I think we all have times where we're reactive, right? And it's meditation helps us notice the path that takes us to that reactivity. So when we start to see how our body is responding, how our breath responds, the thought process that's going on and causing those reactions, we start to develop a higher sense of awareness and attunement to these things. Then we have the ability to adjust them and make more educated choices, and so part of it is just that awareness of seeing how we respond in those areas. And when you can make a more responsive action rather than a reactive instinctual response, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. And a lot of times, one of my longtime teachers, he always says, uh, with yielding, you can make your enemies your friends, but without yielding, oftentimes your friends will become your enemies. And so when you can figure out how to yield and how to be strategic in your interactions, it can be very powerful.
I love that. Thank you. And I actually really appreciate that in regards to like you adjust from awareness. So if you're aware, you can make the adjustments. And so being able to know that meditation allows us to be able to see where our body is reacting, what is triggering that, that's power, that's knowledge within itself. And once you have that sense of awareness, making the pivots, making the adjustments, knowing what it is, going back to what you said earlier, what does life look like if I were to make these types of changes? What does life look like if I continue to not make the changes in regards to now that I know that I'm aware if I'm adapting or if I'm not adapting? Is this the life that I really want to live? Is this the life that I really want to own in regards to my creations? And so thank you for walking through that. So just a quick fire round and we'll get into our last two questions, Jeff. What's one myth about meditation that drives you nuts?
I think we already touched on it, and it's that people thinking that they can't do meditation if they're not able to quiet their mind.
There you go. What is your favorite place to meditate besides a cushion?
Uh, every morning, I love going down to my library and doing my morning ritual.
Okay. What's more powerful, discipline or surrender?
I think discipline is important, but in order to have discipline, you need to surrender to the thoughts that are keeping you from being disciplined. So I think they're very closely connected.
So surrender so you can have the discipline. So surrender first.
I lean a little more the other way.
Discipline.
Yeah,
All right, there we go. Discipline. All right, so one daily habit you can't live without.
love.
Ooh, okay. I like it. I like it. I like it. All right. So, Jeff, last two questions. Give some insights for the girl dads, the father figures, the partners, the spouses of those that are dealing or struggling with pelvic pain, period pain, heavy periods, and they're really just not being able to find true support and guidance. What could you tell those men and how they could be a part of this journey and process?
I think if you take on a practice like this, it'll help your life in so many ways. And the most important thing that I've seen, I've had so many students through the years that have come and gone, and so many students that have stuck and have still been around after 30 years. And what I've found is that if you invest a little bit of time every day and you keep that up for a year, you'll see so many benefits from this practice that it'll help every area of your life and you'll never want to stop. But you need to have the discipline and consistency to make it through those kind of ups and downs in the beginning while you're still tapping at the rock and haven't seen where the results are going. You kind of have to have a little bit of belief there. And if you can do that, meditation will be one of the best things you ever do for yourself.
I love it. So, to those girl dads, father figures, role models, um, get a great meditative practice and then help those loved ones that are experiencing painful periods, heavy periods, pelvic pain, the opportunity to also join in and see the benefits of how this can really shape your life. Last question, Jeff. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
Mm, maybe Lazu.
Mm.
And since I believe he was a vegetarian, probably vegetables and rice.
Okay, I love some good vegetables and rice. So Lazu, vegetables and rice. All right, let everybody know where they can find you and how they can tap into you and support.
So you can go to theyieldingwarrior.com. Also, I'm giving away a free copy of my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior. If you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send you out a copy of the book. Also, on the website, you can check out, we have a 2-week trial so you can see what some of our meditation practices are like and see if that's a good fit for you and see what some of these different things are we've been talking about.
I love it. Did you drop that link into the form, or are you able to email me that link so I can put it in the show notes for people to go
Sure.
get the book? Okay,
I can do that.
sounds good. Jeff, thank you for being an amazing guest on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. I really hope that our listeners understand that meditation isn't about peace, but about power, about presence, and learning how to yield without giving up. Y'all, it's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie, host of the Empire Plates, Empire Lives podcast. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.